We see it all the time. People make moves like this too soon or without the right protections in place, and then having to unpick it later is a bit of a nightmare.
It's not one every week, but it sometimes feels like that where somebody's getting divorced really frequently between clients. We have to splitting out profiles, updating plans. It does happen. We are back in your life, and today we've got the Financial Advisor Hotline. Mike's got no great advice to give in all aspects of life, so we've got Jess here today.
Yay. Thanks for having me.
We asked listeners to send their money questions. That was on Instagram, so if you're not following Lighthouse Financial on Instagram, go and do it right now. From KiwiSaver and mortgages to investing and building wealth, we're sharing all of our thoughts. So Jess...
all of them. Wow.
I haven't even read any of the questions, in fact.
Oh, okay. Listen, you're going to enjoy this, I think, a lot. So I'll hit you with the questions and we'll debate them.
Yeah.
So question number 1. I'm 25 and in an aggressive KiwiSaver fund. Planning to buy a house in about 5 years. Should I start shifting funds now or wait until I'm closer?
So, important standpoint, I did get asked, how is this not personalized financial advice and will we lose our license? My response was, well, it's my license, and if we're going to lose it, I'm going to be the person to do it. No, I'm joking. So the big thing is we're just talking in general terms today. If you want to talk very specifically about your situation, you should reach out and we can organize a chat. In terms of if you are buying a house within the next 5 years, the first thing I'd probably say is within 5 years is a very kind of loosey-goosey time frame. Probably depends on a whole bunch of things. One of my favorite things to do when we go and do our corporate webinars is people go I'm ages away from buying a house, and Mike's actually 1 + 1 = you can have a mortgage now.
Yeah.
So make sure you've actually know how far away deposit and income are the only two things that matter. 5 years for an aggressive fund is you shouldn't be an aggressive fund if you've got a 5-year time horizon. If you look at any of the product disclosure statements that talk about high growth KiwiSaver funds, it says
they give you the timeline, 8 to 10 more years than that. Yeah. And whatever KiwiSaver fund you're in, you'll be able to go check your appropriate time horizon. Though it is always valuable to talk to an advisor about that as well. I think specific to your situation, because just because it says that that's your time horizon doesn't mean that you can handle that volatility is the other component, right?
Yeah.
But sure. Our advice for Ruby would be talk to a mortgage advisor, get the actual timeline nailed down because it could be sooner than you think. Talk to a KiwiSaver advisor for you specifically.
Yeah, remember you can buy a house with a 10% deposit. There's a question about your serviceability. But yeah, I would definitely go over chat with her. Even if you can't do anything or buy anything tomorrow, you want to know exactly what you're aiming for.
Yeah, at least you know. Cool. Okay. I'm 29 and earning decent money now. Go you, Simon. And trying to be more intentional with my finances. What should my priority actually be? Building an emergency fund, investing, or saving for a house deposit? I know how I feel about that one.
How do you feel, Jess?
Emergency fund. Definitely. That implies he doesn't have one, right?
Yep.
So I would start with that for sure.
For sure. And why is that?
Because everything could go to pot and you won't have anything to fall back on. Yeah. So if you're investing your money and it's going into a high growth type situation and then markets drop off a cliff, like COVID, right? Say it's COVID, markets have dropped off a cliff. You've lost 30% of the money that you invested. Perhaps you also lose your job because there's a global financial crisis situation.
Double whammy.
It's a double whammy. And so, you don't have your cash emergency fund to fall back on.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. You don't necessarily need to do the full 3 to 6 months, but you need to get some cash in the bank to start with. And then in terms of investing into shares, saving for a first home, really depends on your goals and what you're wanting to try and do. I mean, generally speaking, when we do our presentations, we go get your income up, buy your first home, because statistically people who own their own home are in a more secure financial position long term, then pay down some debt, buy an investment property once the debt's gone your own home, then start to look at shares, generally speaking. But for whatever reason, Simon might be different. You might be going to do an OE. You never know kind of what the other goals are that are going on. But I think emergency funds are a good starting point.
Good. Cool. Agree. Now, every time there's a war or geopolitical crisis, the markets seem to drop. Should I be worried about my investments right now? That's from Ben.
Okay, Ben. Is this your Ben, Emily? No, we're not talking about it? Okay, if it is, Em's a man. when are we having a drink, my guy? The big thing I would say, firstly, we'll link to the previous episode we just did where we talk about the Iran-US conflict. But the big thing is, while removing the human element to it, markets go up and down all the time, right, Jess? There's always going to be another thing that's going to happen. And if you try and time those things, I think one of my favorite sayings is an economist will forecast the next recession 10 times before it happens.
I love that. Yeah. No, I think if you're investing, then you should be ready for volatility in some form. That's the bottom line, right?
Yeah, it's the price for admission.
Yeah, exactly. Right. This question is from Sarah. I've been contributing 3% to KiwiSaver since I started working, but I'm wondering if I should increase it to 6% now that I'm earning more. Is that usually worth doing, or is it better to invest outside of KiwiSaver?
I know this comes up in a lot of the financial plans you do, Jess.
Tons and tons, yeah. And it's so funny because as soon as you point out some sort of basic reasoning for why we don't recommend this, people are like, oh, duh. But I would say my first question for Sarah would be, what are you like at saving first? If you really are terrible at putting money away, you're a really bad spender and you just know that you need to be locked down, then sure, maybe you want to increase your contributions, especially if you're working towards a first home deposit, right? It's kind of savings that you actually can't touch until you buy a house. But generally speaking, our advice would be match your employer contributions so that you're getting the most out of that. You're getting the government contributions potentially, depending on your income. Other than that, you're just locking money away for no good reason. Anything to add?
What she said.
Yeah, pretty much. If it's like for Sarah, for example, for a lot of our clients, they're looking towards financial freedom before 65. So if you're locking money into KiwiSaver, you can't touch it until 65. You're better to have some flexibility outside of that and invest in a way that you can draw down on sooner.
Yeah, there's no who knows what they'll do with the KiwiSaver rules in the future.
From Jamie. I'm honestly a pretty bad spender. Every time I earn more, I just seem to spend more. How do you actually break that habit?
Yeah, it's a good question. The first thing I'd say, Jamie, is you're not alone. I'd say, what do you reckon, like 80% of people are like that?
Yeah, maybe a little less, maybe 60, 70.
Yeah, a lot of people suck with their money. I'd say the main thing you could think about, Jamie, is we are designed for immediate gratification when it comes to money, and all the marketing out there, all the data around how many times you're being advertised to a day. You're never going to be able to stick to that if there's not a reason, and if you're not designed that way naturally to plan for the long term. You're never going to be able to stick to it if you don't go, okay, I'm not going to do this thing because there's something else that's more important to me.
Totally.
So the first thing I would say is, what are your goals, Jamie? What you trying to achieve? Do you want to retire early, buy a house, go on some holidays, whatever it might be? You need to have your why sorted, or you're never going to be able to stick to it. And then after that, once you've got what you're working towards, it's all just systems and structure, isn't it, Jess?
I was going to say exactly the same thing. Systems and processes, you're only as good as those. And so I would say for Jamie, get rid of your credit cards, cut them up. You don't need the points. Get rid of any gem visas, afterpays, all of that stuff. Clear it out. Yeah, cut it up. And then probably my very favorite, if you're just going to pick one thing to do to change within your sort of financial ecosystem, is to give yourself a weekly allowance. So run a budget, figure out what your weekly allowance can be, and then you separate that into a card that you carry on you all the time. So you can look at your account. If you see something that you like, you can look at your account and know exactly how much you're allowed to spend on fun stuff. Food and fun stuff is what I would separate into that little allowance every week.
Yep. And go check out our friends at PocketSmith as well.
Yeah, PocketSmith. Love them.
Yep. You can lie to a spreadsheet, but you can't lie to PocketSmith.
Now, this question is from Cam. How do you actually know if you're on track for retirement or if you're behind? My mum is stressing out.
Obviously, this is where we go, like you should go, book a time with a financial advisor to work out whether you're, heading in the right direction, making the right decision. So if you need to check out the Lighthouse Financial website for some support, do that. If you don't want to pay for a financial advisor, there are good tools. Like sorted.org has a bunch of retirement calculators.
Yes.
And there's a bunch of those sort of tools out there. But there is, without the person who's actually being like, I love it when you'd be like, yeah, you can go retire tomorrow. Or actually, no, we need to get this sorted. You sometimes refer to them as sad plans.
Oh, sometimes.
But at least the sad plan means that
they know.
Yep, and you are stretching like their retirement opposed to just like it falling off a cliff 5 years in.
Yeah.
That's probably what I'd say.
Yeah, I know we work in this business, and so I find it really hard to comprehend how anybody would know without doing it. Like how I actually don't know how people know.
And there's some people I run into the first time I meet them, and I'm like, you're rich and you're never going to spend all your money, but they have like the scarcity mindset. And there's some people who think like chuck their feet on the table, think they're a big baller. And I'm just like, I've seen bigger.
This question is from Mitch. Thoughts on term deposits? Can't afford a house. I got a bunch of cash. Should I just chuck my 75K into the S&P? Oh, there's a lot to unpack here, Mitch.
Yeah. 75 grand. You can buy your first home with 75 grand in a lot of situations, depending on your income. If you buy something, once again, you know, maybe Mitch has specific tastes and wants 4 bedrooms and a pool in the right suburb. But 10% deposit, 750K house, it just depends on what his income is. So first thing I would say is actually go talk to a mortgage advisor, see how close you are. Then the question becomes term deposits and shares. What do you think, Jess?
Yeah, well, term deposits are fine if you are you're either in a holding pattern, you're not sure what you're going to do, or you're working towards a short-term goal. So just bear in mind that all a term deposit is going to do is buffer you against inflation. So yep, you're getting your interest, and you know, when inflation's super high, you're getting 6 or 7% on a term deposit, you're thinking, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Actually, you're back at pretty close to zero because inflation is pulling you back there. So that's why we say it's good for a short-term buffer.
And they're locked up, that you like can't get access to the money. So like if you change your mind and was like, actually I do want to go buy a house now, I've spoken to Mike and realized I can get a pre-approval, but you're going to deal with break fees with a term deposit. There are like, whether it's just like a savings account with the bank that might be making like 2 or 3%. And there's other non-bank providers that offer cash funds that could be a good option for some people. They do work. You've just got to be careful that your money's not locked up and then you go, actually, I do want it, because I have seen that many, many a time.
Yes. So there's such a thing that exists. There's diversified cash funds that you still get a reasonable rate on, but it's not locked away the same way a term deposit is.
Correct.
So you might want to research some of those ideas. This one's juicy. Okay, Michelle.
Juicy.
What is the biggest financial mistake you've made and regret?
I'll give 2. The first one is after I bought my first home, I thought I would dig out under my 2-bedroom unit and add another floor down. And I think I spent like 25 grand on designs and drawings and stuff. And it's got to be up there. I mean, your boys made a lot of stupid decisions. That would be up there with like, I just burnt 25K.
Oh, you didn't do it?
No, it was a 2-bedroom unit. The lady next door like came over to my house crying because she's like, please don't like ruin the foundations of my house, because we were like adjoined. That was a pretty bad, bad decision.
Yep, that's a good learning curve. What was your second one?
Probably when I moved back from Wellington to Auckland, I bought too expensive of a house and too big of a percentage of my income was going towards my mortgage repayments.
Oh, what was life like? Rice and beans?
Well, it was all good when interest rates were a couple of percent, but as they started to go up. But I tell you what, the good thing has been off the back of that is get my repayments at the same level, and now I'm crushing through debt.
I think probably the worst one is that I went overseas for 1 or 2 years and came back 8 years later. And all the while was putting very minimal, if anything, back into my student loan over here. So I've had to come back and face that and just smash through it, which I've thankfully done. Yay. But there's interest and there's penalties. So if that's you, just beware, you will probably have to face the music one day. And if you don't face it now, and you like, will you ever come home? You know, like you've got to factor that in. You're going to want to come home, visit family, or see New Zealand or whatever again. You've got to think about that.
Have you ever worried like somebody's going to be waiting for you at the airport, or never got to that point? Oh, really?
I mean, to be honest, like my total balance was never, you see the headline ones. Mine was never like that. It was never anything close, but it definitely crossed my mind.
You're wealthy with life experiences.
Yeah. Well, that was what I figured, to be honest. Like we wouldn't have lived the life that we lived over there had I been sending thousands and thousands back into the student loan. So, YOLO a little bit. Okay, cool. Jessie is asking us, do you guys think the RBNZ regret holding the OCR?
with the most recent announcement,
That's not very long to have a regret.
no. And I don't think they regret holding. I think the question was always whether they're going to hold or increase the OCR. So no, I don't think they regret. You got to remember inflation is at 3.1 above the band. I mean, if they increased it, I think there probably would have been some regret, but I think they probably made the right decision.
All right. Last question is from Alex. So my boyfriend and I are both in a position to buy homes separately. Should we just combine our money to buy one big home? Surely buying together makes more sense.
Oh, this is juicy.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different factors in here. Obviously, when we do financial plans, some people come to us, and I've had a couple before who they told each other their incomes and their assets and everything for the first time in front of me, and I was just facilitating the conversation.
Gosh.
I think you need to be having conversations around, one is, do you both have the same deposit? Are their parents involved in helping? Do you have similar incomes? Essentially, I'm moving towards like a relationship agreement type conversation. If everything's super equal, then I would still just make sure you have a chat with a lawyer to make sure that you're comfortable with the risks associated. I do think buying a home together is more efficient for the financial plan as a whole, because you're buying a house, paying down debt, and then you're growing your lifestyle together. Obviously, the big risk is what happens if it doesn't work out.
Exactly. Two incomes are stronger than one. You can't argue with that. And you're both tackling the same lump of debt together, which is great. And usually, if you're putting your resources together, you're ending up with a nicer house than had you needed to both buy it separately, right? There's that sort of component as well, but absolutely acknowledge there's risks in there. And we see it all the time. You know, people make moves like this too soon or without the right protections in place, and then having to unpick it later is a bit of a nightmare. I
mean, like I've had like a couple, pretty much like, it's not one every week, but like it can't sometimes feels like that where somebody's getting divorced like really frequently between clients. We have to splitting out profiles, updating plans. It does happen.
So just bear that in mind.
Okay, all right. That is the advisor hotline done for this episode. Let us know. I'd like it, to be honest. I don't have to do any prep for these episodes. We just answer questions. My life is great like this.
This was fun. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
If you want us to do more episodes like this, let us know in the comment section below. And if you've got questions for the next advisor hotline episode, put your question in the comment section. We'll wrap it up there. Make sure to like, subscribe, review. We'll catch you next time.
Bye.